Hello and welcome to 6 Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Ate the Devil Fruit Part 6. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
As Izuku made his way back to the bleachers, Honda smiled, saying, "And the big man returns." Mina exclaimed, "Nice fight." "Yes, that was truly amazing," exclaimed Toru. Izuku blushed and grinned a little before taking a seat next to Tenya. Thanks," she said. Momo turned her head and asked, "Are you alright? Do you need any bandages, burn cream, or food?" "I'm fine, thanks for asking," Izuku replied. "Recovery girl already gave me something to eat while treating my burns before sending me on my way. I might grab a snack after Itsuka's match, though." "Oh yeah, it's her turn," Ochako exclaimed, turning around to face the stage immediately. "Let's get this show rolling," shouted the present Mike. "I know we've had some excitement with the last match, but there's plenty more to come." In our east corner, she's the class president of 1B. She's been called the big sister of 1B. It's Itsuka Kendo from the hero course. Versus manly and passionate hardening, Eijiro Kirishima of the hero course. Tetsu exclaimed, "Go Kendo," from the booth. Setsuna exclaimed, "Yeah, beat him." Mina yelled in support of her friend, Eiji. "You can't lose to her. Go Kirishima. Use your sharpened hands to rip her clothes off," Mineta screamed. Izuku gave him a death glare and Kyoka gave him a jab in the ear for that remark. Present Mike declared, "Let's get this 7th match started. Start." "I don't exactly feel comfortable about hitting a woman, but I'm not going to lose," Eijiro laughed as he charged forward. "You seem like a martial arts girl. Just a warning, you might hurt your hands against my quirk." Izuku saw Eijiro running towards Itsuka and scowled. Kirishima is going to be in a world of hurt if he underestimates Itsuka. "How come Eiji's quirk allows him to tank quite a bit of damage?" Mina inquired inquiringly. "Itsuka's quirk allows her to dish out a lot of damage," Izuku responded. "Not only that, but she doesn't rely on just hitting her opponent with her fists. Especially when she was training with me at Rikai. I'm sure she has countermeasures." Among the students around him, Katsuki remarked, "Weird hair is gonna be in pain if he's not careful," drawing looks of surprise. Feeling certain that he could counter any counters, Eijiro threw a straight at Itsuka. Itsuka read the straight with ease, evading the clenched fist and launching a short uppercut into Eijiro's ribcage. Itsuka spread her hands wide at the moment of impact to increase the force of impact. Eijiro felt the impact and coughed, but he was able to get through it without any problems. As Itsuka ducked under a left hook, she whispered, "Another tetsu. Wonder if he falls for the same tricks." "Uraraka," exclaimed Eijiro, launching a flurry of fists in pursuit of Itsuka. Fists were woven and parried by Itsuka, who only widened her hands when necessary. Her foot was only a few centimeters from the boundary when she was suddenly shoved close to it. Setsuna exclaimed, "Come on, you can't lose Kendo," from the bleachers. Tetsu interrupted his own yell with, "Yeah, beat. Wait a minute, why am I getting a sense of deja vu?" "Because you fell for this trick when sparring with Kendo before," Awase smirked in response. Eijiro's uppercut was blocked by Itsuka, who stumbled unexpectedly, giving him an opening. Eijiro yelled, "Got you," while using all of his weight and strength to deliver a right overhead punch. This gave Itsuka a sly smile, telling Eijiro he had just been tricked into falling into a trap. But it was too late for him to retreat. Abruptly, Itsuka regained her balance and ducked to the right, just as the fist sped past her face. She didn't let this opportunity pass, grabbing his wrist with both hands and spreading them apart in the process. Then, Itsuka spun on her heels and threw Eijiro out of the ring with her weight and strength. She threw Eijiro out of the air, and then, just for good measure, she slapped him on the ground with her largest ever hands, barely making contact with him despite throwing him. In the end, even though Eijiro was hardened, he was smashed into the ground. Midnight cried, "Fighter Kirishima is out of bounds." Kendo advances to the second round. And it's the old bait and hook. Itsuka Kendo of 1B lures Eijiro Kirishima to the edge, making him think he was pushing her back, only for her to mercilessly crush that thought, exclaimed present Mike with delight. Vlad pointed a finger at Shoto and said, "Ha, beat that Shoto. Though 1A might dominate the finals in numbers, my students are nothing to laugh about either. It's illogical to argue about this, Shoto said. Just get the next match going. Alright, let's continue on, shouted the present Mike. It's a shock from the last match. He took out several teams in one go from the last game. Sparking Killing Boy, from the hero course, Denki Kaminari. Versus, fully equipped with support items, from the support course, Mei Hatsume. Kyoka pondered, so, he's up against a support course. Tsuyu wondered, I wonder what kind of fight this is going to be. Sato said, perplexed, I mean, what is that? Sato was referring to Denki's possession of 2 wires that were connected to a power station that Hatsume had removed from some location. Hatsume had thrown Denki the wires, so he hadn't exactly broken any rules, but everyone was pretty perplexed about what was going on. Mei said, alright, ready? As Present Mike yelled, start. Yeah sure, but you going to keep your end of the bargain? Denki responded. Of course. Mei laughed. This is the perfect opportunity for me. Any more after that is just a waste of my time. Present Mike turned to Shoto to confirm that he had indeed said, start, and he said, has the fight started? Shoto said, perplexed, it has, but something is going on with those two. Mei called out, hello everyone, as her voice reverberated throughout the stadium. Present Mike blinked, what? Why? Shoto asked, perplexed, she's wearing speakers. Wait. Oh no, I think I know where this is going. Mei started showing off all of her inventions and pushed them hard to the stadium's support companies. Mei magnified her vision using her oddity, zoom, and saw that the support companies were both confused and seemed interested. Mei soon realized Denki's mission when he started to engage some more powerful gears. For all his eccentricities, Denki was just Mei's human power source, to be used whenever she needed it. After 15 minutes with a sigh of relief, Mei wiped the perspiration from her forehead and said, I have nothing left to say now that I've presented every single one of them. After making that declaration, she left the ring. Midnight, looking a little confused, said, Hatsume is out of bounds. Kaminari advances to the second round. After providing electricity for so long, Kaminari had reverted to his retarded state and asked, Wei. He's back in that state, Kyoka exclaimed, observing Kaminari idly standing with his thumbs raised. Tenya remarked, to win like this seems empty. He couldn't help but wonder what might have transpired if he had engaged Mei in combat. He had a pretty good idea that Mei would have used him as a prop for a presentation just by being on her team in the cavalry battle. Izuku blinked and looked back down at his notebook. Well, she certainly achieved her objective. Granted, some of those items really are interesting. Was it because of her invention that you could keep up with me on my turns? He asked. Actually yes, Tenya replied to Izuku. I admit, her inventions are top-notch. It allowed me to reach higher speeds and turns without straining myself, though it took all my concentration just to fold. Low, you. Tenya's words faltered as he observed Izuku scribbling furiously in his notebook. Tenya saw trails of smoke rising into the air as Izuku wrote so quickly. He could also hear some of the words that Izuku occasionally muttered to himself. How did he obtain the notebook? Tenya and a few other people who turned to look at Izuku thought the same thing. Tsuyu asked inquisitively, what are you writing? Izuku looked up and said, huh? Oh, just taking some quick notes about everybody's quirks so far. Didn't get the chance to earlier. Tenya, his curiosity taking over, asked, do you mind if I take a look? Izuku nodded and passed Tenya his notes, saying, sure, I'm going to head down first. Make sure to keep it for me. After the fight between Mei and Denki, Izuku went down to get something to eat and also to have a conversation with Momo and Ochako, who had already left to get ready for their next match. Mina inquired, so, what's it say? With curiosity. It's true, I'm intrigued too, Shoji said. It will be insightful to read what our classmate wrote, Fumikage nodded. Tenya turned the page of the book at random and found a page about Toru. Glancing over Tenya's shoulder, Toru exclaimed, ooh, it's about me. What did he write about? The others, captivated by Izuku's writing, couldn't help but peep over Tenya's shoulder. Mineta sneered and said, did he write the most important thing? Is there the 3 sizes? Kyoka punished Mineta by forcing her earphone jack into her ear and turning up the volume to maximum. Mineta cried out in pain, "Yuka, but he persisted in trying to figure out who had written those numbers, possibly an Izuku spy. Tsuyu swiftly smacked him on the face with her tongue. "Stubborn pervert," Kyoka growled, pulling out her earphone jack. "So did he?" she asked. "He's not that crude," Tsuyu scowled before turning to face Tenya. "I wouldn't mind," Mina replied. "He seems like the person who'd be able to tell but not really care." "If he could tell mine, I'd be even more amazed," Toru remarked. Tenya cut his arms in time with his argument. "Midoriya is much more respectful than that." "Let's just see what he wrote," Ajiro suggested to himself. Tenya started reading the book aloud while Toru, Mina, and Ajiro were watching. Tenya was the one with the book. Fumikage sent Dark Shadow to investigate, while Shoji stretched an eye over his tentacled arms. "Let's see. Looks like some basic information about Toru. He's made a pentagram stats chart on you. Think he's correct about it?" replied Tenya. "Well, I guess he's not wrong," acknowledged Toru. "If he's scaling it to his own personal strength or the average of the class, I would be on the lower scale on strength and speed." "It looks like he's also written some suggestions," Ajiro said. "Some form of martial arts training, mainly on ending fights swiftly, along with grappling. Aiming to hit pressure points." "I'm more interested in what he's written about her quirk," Mina said. "Look, he's even drawn arrows all over the place for Toru's quirk, invisibility. Possible mutant and emitter type. How does that work?" "It looks like he listed possibilities," Shoji observed. "From skin camouflaging itself to bending light waves, which he noted that you could possibly turn off. Speaking of which, is your ability a mutant type?" "I'm not too sure." Toru looked up. "It's labeled as mutant type, but I never really thought about it. I should see if Aizawa-sensei can erase it." "Yo, he's also written about your hero uniform," laughed Dark Shadow. "He thought you were wearing clothes that happened to work with your skin, but it looks like he crossed it out and written nude. Also looks like there are puncture marks when he discovered that." "Well, it's not like I could do anything about that," laughed Toru. "Any clothes I wear just paints a target for me. I can't even wear a sports bra or any type of support for my chest. I'm lucky and unlucky I'm a B-cup. Not large enough to cause lots of sagging for everyday life, but enough to hurt if I try to run with it. I just have to power it through." "It looks like Midoriya wrote something next to your hero uniform," Tenya said. "It just says, hair. Now I'm just confused. He's also written Mount Lady costume next to it." "Well, if he's figured something out, then I'm definitely going to ask him about it," said Toru. "If he solves my problem, then I'll give him a kiss?" Tsuyu gave Toru an abrupt glare, then gave her a quick kiro and snapped her head back, blushing at her own actions. "I believe we ought to concentrate on the upcoming bout," interrupted Sato. "It's Zero versus Hitoshi." Tenya nodded and put the notebook away. Yes, we should show our support to our fellow classmates by watching. Thanks for waiting. It's the 8th and last match for this round of battles. He's good, but what's with the plainness he just can't get rid of? From the hero course, Honda Zero versus? He hasn't done anything to stand out yet, but don't count him out. From the general course and yet also a reserve student in the hero course, Shinso Hitoshi. Man, that's mean, Honda laughed, pointing his fingers at his rival. Instead of responding, Hitoshi took out a Kali stick. "Hey, is that allowed?" Honda inquired, turning to look at Midnight. "It is," said Midnight. Fighter Shinso has petitioned to be allowed to use a few select weapons with the condition that they only be used in the final part of the festival. Furthermore, he may only bring one weapon, all of which are non-lethal. This is to make the fight fairer, as Hitoshi is a reserve student for the hero course. Thus his own training is limited compared to those in the hero course. "Well, okay," Honda smiled. "I don't usually complain." Present Mike signaled the beginning of the match, and Honda shot his tape at Hitoshi, attempting to encircle him with it. Hitoshi effortlessly sidestepped the attempt and charged towards Honda, evading Honda's attempts to apprehend him. Hitoshi thought, this is so much easier than dodging Aizawa-sensei's cloth. He had been tempted to honor him by wielding the capture cloth, but it was not an easy weapon to use. Shoto had only used the weapon for a few months, but even he had admitted to him that it had taken him 6 years to master it. In this fight, using the stick was more convenient. Honta muttered, "Man, you're slippery than I thought," as he leapt back to avoid Hitoshi's blow. He fired his tape at the weapon, encircling the stick as he saw his opportunity. Before Honta could free himself, Hitoshi threw the stick directly into Honta's face. Hitoshi was teased. That must have been embarrassing, as Honta swiftly tossed the stick aside. "Not as Honta began, then abruptly stopped, his eyes going round. Hitoshi grinned and said, "Gotcha. Now turn around and leave the ring." Present Mike exclaimed, bewildered, "Oh, what's this? Why has Zero stopped moving? Wait, why is he turning around to walk out now? What's going on?" Shoto said, "He's been caught by Shinso's quirk," and then he explained Hitoshi's quirk and why he believed the entrance exam to be nonsensical. "Gah, why did he answer him?" Mashirao grumbled, "We told him that either the blonde kid or the purple kid had the mind control quirk, and not to answer him." "Well, at least you did, Fumikage." "Me? I didn't say anything," Fumikage blinked. "I thought you and Aoyama did." The two boys turned to face Yuga, who started to pose again in the spotlight, saying, I did." And the two boys uttered simultaneously, "What did you say specifically?" "I told him that he had an uncouth and unflashy quirk." Yuga shouted, "That should have been enough." At this explanation, Fumikage and Mashirao grimaced and blamed themselves for not having explained the potential quirk to Honta. "You didn't know he had a brainwashing quirk?" Tenya inquired in a perplexed manner. "He told us back on the first day, during our quirk apprehension test." After exchanging glances, Kyoka spoke for everyone when she said, "We never knew. He told only 4 of us." Tenya sighed, realizing that his peers were unaware. "Midoriya, Yaoyorozu and Uraraka were with me when he told us, and that was because Midoriya asked. I never realized he didn't tell anyone else, as he is a reserve student. Not to mention his quirk wasn't shown during the whole test, as he couldn't use it to influence others. Not to mention that, in contrast to the second day when they had done their introductions and quirks, Hitoshi had never been formally introduced to everyone else and what his quirk was. As Honta took his last step out of the ring, Midnight yelled, "Honta Zero is out of bounds." Hitoshi Shinso advances to the next round. A bewildered Honta blinked. "Huh? Damn it, I just lost, didn't I? Man, that's a wicked-ass quirk there." When Hitoshi heard that remark, he was eager to simply leave without listening to his opponent scream, whine, or declare that his quirk was evil. Blinking in surprise, he wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. Hitoshi didn't care if the experts thought he was a villain. He simply strode toward the exit. He would take whatever came his way because he wanted to be a hero. He heard the pro's remarks as he was leaving. "Damn, that quirk would work well against villains. I wish I had it," said a pro. A well-known teacher with seafoam green hair and a mask covered in smiling faces said, "UA's not that smart if he's in the general studies course. At least they put him in as a reserve student for hero course. Now, if he was at my school. Well, they do have tons of people applying to the school, so it can't be helped," another replied. "There are bound to be people who fall through those cracks, not to mention the amount of talent they get every year. Each year the tests vary to make sure nobody can try to predict them and prepare for it." But it looks like he's been working through that," said another. "Not only did he manage to get into the final, but he's even defeated someone." As he made his way to the weighing room, Hitoshi had to cover his mouth to keep from grinning. With his back to the announcer booth, Shoto couldn't help but smile at his apprentice in a sense. A short while ago Momo and Ochako, meanwhile, were waiting for their match in the same waiting area. Both of them were watching Hitoshi battle Honta on the television in the room. "Hey," Izuku said, entering the room. "Deku, Izuku." Momo and Ochako exclaimed as they turned to face their crush. Izuku blinked and pointed to Ochako, saying, "Holy, your eyebrows are twitching." Then she turned to Momo and said, "Yours are too." Momo and Ochako both took a deep breath to calm themselves. "Ehehe, really? Must be the nerves," Ochako said. Can't blame you," Izuku replied. "You two are fighting Bakugo and Todoroki." Both women were aware of the overwhelming strength of their respective opponents. The Son of Endeavor was the other, and the first was a fighting prodigy that they had trained with in the mornings. It would be an uphill battle for both of them. "Yeah. I'm a bit scared," said Ochako. But after seeing your match, I know I need to do this if I truly want to be a hero. They were all aware that Katsuki never backs down, not even when he was fighting a girl. This was a stage, after all, where the competition to be the best was fierce. Nothing should be withheld from anyone, and Katsuki is no exception. Momo sympathized a little with Ochako, even though he was up against an equally formidable opponent. Even though Shoto appeared to be a little more insane than normal, Katsuki was the one who was more violently inclined. You two have helped me so much, so I thought I could probably help you too in return, even if it's a little, Izuku said as he pulled out 2 thin binders. In my right for Ochako, a plan to use your quirk against Bakugo. The left one is for you, Momo. A plan to use your quirk against Todoroki. Both are a bit rough, but it's something I came up with. With confused feelings in their hearts, both girls glanced at the binders. They were both aware of Izuku's highly analytical mind. The cavalry battle itself was the ideal illustration. Furthermore, they had previously seen his notes from earlier in the summer. It examined the advantages and disadvantages of every professional hero in great detail. To be honest, Izuku's ability to absorb so much information in a single day or even with a quick glance was terrifying. Right in front of them was all the information they could possibly need to win. All they had to do was extend their hand in front of them. Deku, thank you, but it's okay, Ochako replied. I appreciate the offer, but I will also have to decline, Momo replied. The folders bent slightly, as though withering from rejection, and Izuku blinked. Ochako pressed her fingers together and exclaimed, I keep seeing more and more amazing sides to you. You're amazing, Deku. Momo put her hand to her forehead and said, yeah, you really did shine throughout the entire competition, both in the obstacle course and the cavalry battle. I feel like I relied on you a little too much, acknowledged Ochako. So for that, I want to stand up on my own. That's why it's fine. Everyone's facing the future and doing their hardest. That means even if we're friends, we're rivals. So Momo, I'll meet you in the semifinals, and then the best one of us will go to the finals to wait for Deku or Itsuka, Ochako said, turning around as she prepared to leave. You better defeat Bakugo too, because I'll defeat Todoroki, Momo grinned as she gave the thumbs up again. Izuku gave Ochako a broad smile and nodded in agreement, energizing Ochako. She turned around and walked out of the room toward the arena. As silence fell between them, Izuku said, so, are you hungry? Adding, I brought some food. Momo nodded in relief, that would be appreciated, as Izuku reached out and rounded a corner of the room. Moments afterward, Izuku was carrying a tiny container filled with high-fat food into the space. It contained avocado slices, cheese-covered fries, and a fruit drink. Momo gorged herself on the food, appreciating that her oddity allowed her to consume such high-fat foods. Izuku paid nothing because he was participating in the tournament, which gave him access to food and other benefits as well as any energy he might need for the upcoming fights. Momo asked, did you already eat? And held out some fries. I had a hot dog and a banana, Izuku responded. I'm good and ready to fight. As Itsuka entered the room, she teased her, saying, then that'll be one less reason you can use when you lose. Though Itsuka chose to wait in the other room with Izuku, she was technically meant to be waiting in the other waiting room with Shoto due to his temperament and the intense tension. After all, it wasn't like there was a rule against that. Present Mike exclaimed excitedly, okay, let's start the first match of the second rounds. You already know who they area Katsuki Bakugo versus Ochako Uraraka. It could be the most unsettling matchup next, Tsuyu said. I almost don't want to watch, Kyoka shared. With their gazes fixed on one another, the two contestants stood in the ring. As he readied himself, Katsuki inhaled deeply. Having trained with Ochako previously during their morning workouts with Izuku and Momo, he had a hazy memory of her peculiarity. Since she and Izuku were close, she would probably contract Izuku's persistence. He would not trip over barriers. He was aiming for one thing. Reaching the championship round and ultimately defeating Izuku in front of all of them, solidifying his status as the real deal. Neither his present opponent nor whoever his next opponent might stop him. Mitsuki yelled from the bleachers, if you lose, I'm going to tease the hell out of you. Which made Katsuki twitch with annoyance. Present Mike exclaimed, disregarding Shota's glare, let's get this round started, fight. Without delay, Ochako charged ahead with the intention of tackling Katsuki. I can win as long as I can make contact with him. Ochako ran as quickly as she could, thinking to herself. Her speed from the first day of school had significantly increased with all the training she had received. She also knew that she would fare worse for the duration of the argument. She knew Katsuki was far more resilient than she was, possessing a stubbornness that matched Izuku's determination. Not to mention that his quirk would become more dangerous the more perspiration he produced. Ochako was ready to duck under Katsuki's right arm as he raised it, since that was almost always his opening move. Sadly, she miscalculated the force of the explosion, which caused her to reel back. Mineta exclaimed, "Geez." He blasted her like it was nothing, as the other members of 1A startled at the blow. Setsuna exclaimed, "Come on Uraraka, you can't lose," from her seat. "This isn't good. I knew it was coming, but I couldn't even react in time," Ochako murmured to herself. With his vision obscured by a cloud of smoke, Katsuki narrowed his eyes, prepared for whatever lay ahead. As soon as he noticed something moving through the smoke, he reacted quickly and delivered another explosion-powered palm strike to bring it down. But Katsuki sensed a problem as soon as they collided. He heard neither the smack of flesh nor the cry of agony. He discovered that he had smacked down a PE when the smoke cleared. Uniform. Abruptly emerging from the smoke, Ochako showed herself behind Katsuki, revealing that she had thrown the upper portion of her uniform to divert attention. Fortunately, she had opted to wear a black tank top underneath her uniform. "This is my opportunity." As Ochako threw her hand at Katsuki, she thought, "If I can make him float." Without hesitation, Katsuki blasted her away, interrupting her thoughts. Honta remarked, "Holy shit, his reflexes are insane." Eijiro observed, "He's not holding anything back." Ochako felt a sharp pain shoot through her body as she fell onto her back, but she was able to get back up and charge forward again without hesitation, even though she knew she would lose because Katsuki's reflexes would make it difficult for her to get close to her opponent. Still, she was not going to give up like this. A few in the audience could not stand to watch the fight any longer and closed their eyes rather than witness a girl roll into the ground every time Ochako attempted to get close, but she obstinately decided to go on. The audience was treated to a sight of Katsuki blasting Ochako every time she got close, dust and rubble tossed everywhere upon each explosion. Momo, Izuku, and Itsuka, who chose to watch the fight live rather than on TV, were near the exit. They all winced as Katsuki slammed Ochako with an explosion-powered strike, but they also saw that Ochako wasn't done yet. Katsuki saw it too. Her eyes were still alive and calculating. Midnight and Cementos saw this, too, and decided not to call the fight just yet. A few spectators, including Mitsuki, Inko, and Masaru, witnessed this. Top heroes like All Might and Endeavor saw this, as well as a few other pros and some students. Present Mike could not help but stammer as he delivered his commentary. Most of the audience, however, failed to notice the glint in Ochako's eyes and assumed Katsuki was playing with his prey in a villainous manner. "Hi. Saying you want to be a hero like that is absurd." Pro male hero, unable to bear to watch Ochako get thrashed so much, stood up and yelled, "If there's such a huge difference in your abilities, then just hurry up and send her out of bounds. Give up playing with the girl and bullying her." Beside him, another pro-female hero leapt up to join in, saying, Yes, indeed." The pro-male hero gave a thumbs up and began to boo, setting off a chain reaction among the crowd who felt they were right. Katsuki ignored him, blasting Ochako away each time she charged in. The pro-hero felt he was right and loved that people were agreeing with him. Mitsuki got up and began to throw things at the said pro, including her seat, which she had somehow managed to uproot. The audience is booing. That being said, I also feel the present Mike was interrupted from voicing his opinion by Shoto with an elbow to the face. "Ah, really, just an elbow? How are you doing?" Despite his bandaged hands, he reached for the microphone, but Shoto stopped him. Was that a pro implying that he was teasing? "For what duration have you been an expert?" Shoto glared, the one who'd started it all, and the jeers instantly stopped. Go home and consider switching careers if you can still say that with a straight face. There's no reason for you to continue watching. The pro hero looked like he was about to cry, but before he could say anything, the words struck him harshly. He would be arguing against a teacher at UA, the most prestigious school in the world known for its heroics course, and that would not look good on him. Among other things, becoming a teacher at UA required passing a rigorous test. In other words, arguing with someone from UA would just make you look foolish, especially if that someone was Nezu. Bakugo is exercising caution because he recognizes the strength of the opponent who has prevailed thus far. He can't be too soft on her or lower his guard because he's giving it everything he's got to win. Because doing such a thing is a death sentence in our field. So please, stop being a hero and either go home or sit down for the benefit of all of us. That goes for the second person who joined in on that, Shoto clarified. Both of the professional heroes meekly sat back down, unwilling to draw any more attention after hearing such harsh words. Itsuka piped in, "I'm surprised Present Mike Sensei hasn't noticed it yet." "I think it's the angle," Izuku sighed. "He's mainly focused on commentary for the audience, and thus has to keep his eyes on the competitors. He can't really look up as he's inside a room with a ceiling that extends further than the ground." Aizawa-sensei however looks for everything as he's not the one doing commentary, nor does he really want to. Momo looked up and said, "Harsh but true, but I think it's time for Ochako's showstopper." Ochako, exhausted but unflappable, sighed, "It's time. Getting back up. Thanks Bakugo. For not letting your guard down." At her words, Bakugo squinted and saw that her fingers were once again intertwined. Her quirk was releasing something, but what? Then he heard something whistling in the atmosphere, and it was getting louder by the moment. Katsuki glanced up just in time to see everything that had been upheaved from his explosions falling directly on top of him. Present Mike was shouting, and Katsuki thought, "Damn, shoulda noticed the lack of debris, but it was still a good plan." Tenya exclaimed, startled, she had such a desperate plan all along. "Go Uraraka!" exclaimed Toru and Mina. Suyu said, "Kiro, we underestimated her." "Damn, that's epic. Wonder how Bakugo gonna deal with this," said Eijiro. "I mean, I could tank it but that's all I really could do." Before realizing that only a select few with the right quirk could do anything about that meteor storm, members of 1A and 1B started talking about what they could do against such an attack. The attack stunned even the experienced heroes, and they were at a loss for what to do. With his right hand stabilizing his left for his next move, Katsuki lifted his left and pointed at the debris. Ochako quickly applied her quirk to herself to make herself lighter and faster as she ran forward. This was her one and only opportunity. There would undoubtedly be a gap, whether Katsuki decided to counterattack or dodge, and if she took advantage of that gap, her sneaky move would win. It would only require a single touch. Then she would triumph, just like Deku. Tiny explosions traveled up Ochako's arms just before he touched Katsuki, only a few centimeters away from the point. Katsuki's left hand unleashed a massive explosion that instantly destroyed every piece of debris in one shot. An intended side effect of the explosion was to blow Ochako away from Katsuki with the shockwave. Many of the audience members who had been standing started to stagger back in shock. Itsuka and Momo had to hold on to Izuku in order to keep from falling. Katsuki said, "Since you're friends with Deku, I thought you'd pull something like this," as the dust settled and it became clear that he had not been harmed by Ochako's cunning scheme. Ochako whimpered, in just one shot, when she realized how quickly all of her hard work on the plan had been undone. Mitsuki observed her son's left arm twitch a little and wrote, though not fully unscathed, but he dismissed it as a minor inconvenience. Present Mike remembered his duty and exclaimed, "Bakugo delivers a satisfying explosion. He boldly blasts apart Uraraka's plan." Still, Katsuki had to concede that it had been a very near miss. He tried to will away the pain that twinged through his left arm. Ochako was angry that her scheme had been disregarded so quickly, but she wasn't finished yet. She rose back up gradually, scowling in agony. Though every muscle in her body protested, she refused to give up. Not with everything riding on this match. Ochako desired to advance to the next round, face Momo, and face Izuku in the championship match. She wanted to demonstrate her abilities in order to get noticed and become a hero more quickly so she could support her family. Katsuki grinned and lowered his stance, saying, "All right, let's get serious then, Uraraka." Izuku was shocked by this statement and raised an eyebrow. Katsuki hardly ever addressed people by name. Back in middle and elementary school, Even his friends, or lackeys, to put it more euphemistically, were all given nicknames based on different traits. Hell, derogatory monikers were even given to the teachers at their previous school. Izuku's mother was the only person he had ever addressed by their given name when he had to speak with her. In any case, Katsuki would politely refer to Inko as Auntie Inko. Maybe he thought well of her. Or Katsuki's mother threatened him if he didn't give Inko that call. Even with Izuku, who was the closest person Katsuki had ever called by their real name, that name was a caricature of it. Izuku knew his other nickname would have been something like Freckles or Green Curly Hair if it weren't for that. Ochako realized it was far from finished. She knew Katsuki was taking her even more seriously when he shouted her name rather than his typical nickname, Round Face. Ochako sprinted forward and gave a shout. After dodging a blow with his palm, Katsuki punched Ochako in the stomach. Despite her painful cough, Ochako reached out to seize Katsuki because he was so close. Katsuki jumped back a little and slapped Ochako's hand away, hitting her wrist with his. Ochako yelled, "Not yet," and lunged forward. Glancing around Ochako, Katsuki saw Izuku observing the fight and then grinning. With a blast from his raised right hand, Katsuki shot him diagonally from Ochako. When Ochako turned to look at him, he was gone from her view entirely. Ochako blinked, "Wah," and then heard something behind her. She spun around quickly enough to take Katsuki's high kick to the face and eat it. "Ooh, and a deadly high kick from Bakugo," said Present Mike. Though quite surprising that he used a kick. And what was that move from earlier? "That step. Isn't that Master Rekai's move?" Itsuka responded. "Ghost perplexing steps. How did he learn that?" "Master Rekai did message me that Bakugo had been staying at her dojo for the 2 weeks leading up to this tournament," said Izuku. "Perhaps he learned the basics of it there." Momo looked at Katsuki's feet and thought, "He really is committed to defeating you, but it doesn't look like he can handle the strain as well as you." To his contempt, Katsuki's ankles were indeed twitching. Izuku found it challenging, though it would take him much longer to adjust. But Katsuki was still apprehensive about Ochako. She was watching her closely and prepared to strike if she tried anything. Ochako attempted to push herself up, but her arms and legs gave out as soon as she raised her chest. Even though she was past her breaking point, she didn't want to give up. Ochako, still attempting to fight, crawled in Katsuki's direction. "I can still fight," Ochako exclaimed, attempting to exert herself once more. Her promise to her parents flashed through her mind. Ochako cried out in a desperation, "I will become a hero," before she eventually stopped moving. The match was abruptly stopped by Midnight so she could visit Ochako. Ochako's eyes were glazing over, and Midnight could see that darkness was taking over. However, Ochako uttered 3 words in a whisper just before that. "Daddy. Mommy. Deku." Sighing, Midnight picked up the phone. Uraraka is out of commission. Bakugo advances to the semifinals. The crowd applauded as Ochako was swiftly carried away by the robot paramedics on a stretcher. By the time the paramedics arrived, Ochako had barely regained consciousness and was walking past Izuku and the others. Ochako apologized to Momo and the others in a whisper, saying, "I couldn't keep up my end." "Don't be," Momo said, bending down, and Izuku, who took hold of Ochako's hand, added, "You did really well. Though it may not look like it, you really did push Bakugo to his limits," Izuku said. "You really are strong." As the paramedics took her away to Recovery Girl, Ochako could only nod. "Looks like I'm up next," Momo remarked, turning to face the stage, where Cementos was flattening the surface and filling in the gaps with speed. I don't know if I can win." "You go out there with that mindset and you're sure to lose. Say it with me, I'm going to win," yelled Itsuka angrily. "Not with that mindset." "I'm going to win?" Momo stumbled. Itsuka insisted, louder and with more confidence. "I'm going to win. Louder, I'm going to win." Izuku watched Itsuka get all worked up about Momo, and he could only laugh sarcastically. He couldn't decide at the moment whether he wanted to watch Momo fight or see how Ochako was doing. Ultimately, that choice was made when a robot paramedic showed back up and announced that Ochako would be sleeping as Recovery Girl had instructed and would not be accepting visitors for the time being. Present Mike said, "Ah, that was the first match of the second round. Uraraka. Oh, and Bakugo advances to the semifinals, with a lifeless sigh. In this match, he had been genuinely cheering for the underdog. Oi, if you're going to be the commentator, do it properly, said Shoto. Commentators are supposed to be unbiased. Fine, said Present Mike. I'll do it properly, but it doesn't stop me from hoping that Bakugo would lose. Slam. Present Mike jumped up in shock when the soda cup crashed through the announcement booth window. See, this is why you have to be unbiased, said Shoto. You're lucky that this booth is protected, otherwise that soda cup would have hit you. Point taken, Present Mike said with a serious nod. After tracking the trajectory of the soda cup, Shoto became a little uneasy when he noticed a fuming Mitsuki being comforted by her spouse. He saw that Inko and Toshinori, in his true form, were also making every effort to soothe the furious mother. Because it would take too much work, he chose not to comment on that. Present Mike exclaimed, "Anyways, let's get on with our second match for the second round," as he struggled to gather himself after being thrown an unexpected object. Both of these students got recommendations into the UA Hero course. Both of them are from elite families. It's Momo Yaoyorozu versus Shoto Todoroki. Momo, holding her PE, stood at her end. The uniform is already undone. She was unaware that both men and women in the audience were staring at her, but for a little while, she could feel Minetta's snarling gaze. Until Suyu used Kyoka's earphone jack in her tongue to strike him until he passed out. If she was going to make something substantial for this fight, she was going to need the extra skin. If it could divert her opponent's attention, she might have a better chance of winning, but at least he wasn't using this opportunity to gawk at her. Present Mike exclaimed, "Are you ready? Fight." Shoto opened fire on Momo as soon as the fight started, hoping to freeze him. To counter this, Momo made a cannon very quickly. She fired it into the ice barrage right away. Still, the ammunition was more than just an iron ball. The ethanol the cannonball contained ignited when it struck the ice, creating a tiny spark that was sufficient to ignite and melt the ice. She let off another shot before charging in and assembling a staff for close quarters fighting. 2 cannon fires were heard, but Shoto was unfazed. After all, he had been anticipating something just like this. Not to put Mina down, but Momo was a recommended student for a reason, so it made sense that she could push back against his initial approach. Momo yelled, "Ha!" as she sprang through the freezing dust, launching her staff skyward and slamming it into Shoto's head. Shoto made a leftward dodge with the intention of using it to position his right side for another attack. But in the middle of her vertical strike, Momo stopped and shifted course. Shoto moved quickly to block the staff with his raised arm. Shoto instantly froze the staff upon impact, allowing it to move up the staff. Momo quickly released her hold on her staff, turning it into a blunt sword as she moved to Shoto's left and launched an attack. Shoto thought to himself as he dodged, trying to turn so his right would be facing her, "She's attacking my left side on purpose." Momo wouldn't let him, and he continued to attack by running to his left. Shoto eventually became irritated as he kept evading the blows, especially after Momo attempted to shoot him with a taser that she had made. With a sudden shoulder charge, Momo squeaked and coughed in shock. Shoto grabbed her wrist with his right hand before she could react, instantly activating his quirk. Momo's arm quickly became covered in frost. Momo was about to kick him when she felt her legs go rigid and tried to pull her wrist back. Shoto moved to his right and instantly used both his hand and leg to activate his quirk. Her entire body began to feel like ice, and before long, all that was left of her was her head, trapped inside an icy prison. Momo felt the ice rapidly stealing her body heat, so she attempted to move or even make something to get herself free. She fought to stay awake and felt her eyelids begin to droop. Regretfully, she was rapidly losing her fat reserves since she had already depleted them. "I was unable to harm him at all. Even though we are both recommended students, why are our levels so different?" Momo thought to herself just before she passed out. As soon as Midnight saw Momo was unconscious, she exclaimed, "Yaoyorozu is unable to battle. Todoroki is the winner." Momo was taken away by the robot paramedics after Shoto swiftly melted the ice. Shoto noticed Izuku standing close to the exit as he watched the robots carry her out. Izuku could easily see what Shoto was trying to say with his eyes as they met. "You're up next," Present Mike exclaimed. And Todoroki stopped Yaoyorozu's assault ice cold. Shoto deadpanned. Really? That's the pun you're coming with, but Present Mike chose to ignore him. Let's get to our other quarterfinals on the way. From the east side, he's been going on a winning streak here. Especially with that last match, it's Izuku Midoriya versus, fate can be cruel, having worked together in the cavalry battle, only to be torn to face each other, it's Itsuka Kendo. Izuku and Itsuka stood across from each other as the crowd applauded. Are you prepared to be kicked in the butt? Itsuka asked in a playful manner. I'll show you what I've learned over the years, Izuku smiled and snarked back. Present Mike exclaimed, are you all ready? Fight. Rather than charging at one another, they assumed comparable combat stances and approached one another more slowly. The audience was engrossed in the tension and the impending fight as time passed slowly. Itsuka and Izuku gradually drew nearer until their wrists started to graze one another. The fight appeared to start at the point of contact. Itsuka threw a hook, but Izuku ducked and struck back. Itsuka evaded and retaliated with ease. Before long, it turned into a contest to see who could strike first. The other avoided, parried, or blocked blows and kicks. Woo, now that's a fight, declared Present Mike. You don't see too many hand-to-hand combat these days. It's like watching an action movie during the pre-quirk era. They both seem to be decently skilled in CQC, said Shoto. You don't see that a lot. Haha. Make him bleed. Give him the 1-2, Vlad exclaimed, encouraging the class from his booth. Each class was supporting their classmates in the 1A and 1B booths, respectively. Itsuka thought as she dodged, he's definitely gotten better. I remember when we were back in the dojo, we used a point system, so I'd win our spars even if he was immune to some of the hits. Itsuka soon discovered that she was losing ground as Izuku continued to attack and push her back. Itsuka quickly flipped back to give herself some space, then used that momentum to propel herself forward and clench her fists into a flurry. Izuku raised his left arm in front of him and tried his best to parry or block Itsuka's onslaught. Itsuka moved forward to attempt a straight right, hoping to get past that guard. But she was unprepared for Izuku to abruptly remove the left-hand guard, lowering it first and then using his right hand to catch the fist while maintaining his left side pointed in Itsuka's direction. Izuku was able to push Itsuka a little before he stopped the momentum by stamping his feet. Izuku let out a roar and swung his lowered left hand back out to strike Itsuka in the sternum. Itsuka, wincing at the impact, was able to block the attack by lowering her left hand. But Izuku was far from finished. Itsuka had been pushed back slightly by the impact, which allowed Izuku to pull his right hand back and strike Itsuka in the face. Izuku might have been hesitant to strike someone in the face in the past, especially a girl. Renka and Itsuka drove that from him, the former being more determined to eradicate that specific thought. Furthermore, Itsuka didn't want Izuku to hesitate, particularly during this kind of competition. And first blood goes to Midoriya, said Present Mike, a brilliant straight right into Kendo's face. Though I have to say that looked like it hurt. Ajiro yelled, that's not manly. Yuga concurred, saying, Iida, you agree, right? Kiro, it's a tournament, holding back would be foolish, Suyu replied. I'm all for equality, but that looked like it hurt, Mina groaned. Plus, you didn't really say anything when Bakugo was blasting Ochako all over the place, Honta said. There are a lot of obstacles in the way of victory, Fumikage said. Eijiro pouted, come on, Iida, back me up. Actually, I believe Kendo would have complained if Midoriya had not taken the strike, Tenya replied. From what I know, both of them are childhood friends who trained at the same dojo for a bit. And considering whom their master is, from what I've gleaned from them both would have been irritated if Izuku did not take that opportunity he created. Well, that solves that, Mashiro replied while clasping his hands together. Personally, I would also prefer not to punch a woman in the face, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And since Itsuka is also a martial artist, she would expect such a thing. Let's just get back to the fight, Shoji said, causing everyone to immediately return to it. Monoma was sneering at the fight at 1B area, disgusted. The fact that he lost to Izuku despite mimicking Endeavor's quirk had nothing to do with it. So, at least, he continued to claim. After hearing Monoma's third sarcastic remark, Nato, shut up. You lost. Get over it. I'm trying to watch a good fight, Setsuna snapped. HMPH, All I'm trying to say is that it's barbaric he would aim for the face like that, Monoma growled. Itsuka would probably disagree, Yui answered. Tetsu exclaimed, can we argue after the fight? I'm watching some kick-ass moves here, as he witnessed Izuku strike Itsuka with a left roundhouse heel kick that was delivered backwards before spinning in the air and striking Itsuka once more with his left leg. In response, Itsuka delivered an uppercut to the chin. Since Tetsu was Itsuka's classmate, he was less worried about the fight than Eijiro was. And since she was a classmate, she made it a point during their spars to not treat her like a frail relic. Itsuka was soon shoved back toward the stage's edge. Izuku realized she was cornered and lunged forward. Eijiro exclaimed, hey, wait, that's a trap. Tetsu yelled, "Ye, show him your trap." Itsuka instantly grew her hands to their largest size and grabbed Izuku off guard. Her hands encircled Izuku, enveloping his entire form. She threw Izuku out of the ring and into the air with a shout. She's got it, Tetsu exclaimed. Vlad boasted, pointing at Shoto. Ha, goes to show that my class can take on your top student. It's not over yet, Shoto thought to himself, dismissing Vlad's mocking words. To Itsuka's astonishment, Izuku instantly extended his arms, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her down. Without any delay, Itsuka raised her hands to prevent herself from falling face down, and her hands touched the floor. She realized then that her hands were no longer in proper place. Winner by knockout, Midoriya Izuku, shouted Midnight. This surprised everyone because they believed it's prevailed. Allow me to explain. Though contestant Midoriya was thrown out of the ring, he had not landed on the ground yet, thus keeping him in the fight. By forcing Kendo to step out of bounds before he landed, she was thus the first one to step out of the ring. Ooh, what a twist of events, said Present Mike. Did Midoriya plan this? Was it instincts or was it just plain old luck? Tetsu exclaimed. Damn it! Kendo should have won that. Vlad shared the same viewpoint as his metal-headed pupil. Despite everything, Itsuka accepted the loss with grace and shook hands with Izuku. Izuku said, that was close, gesturing to the throw. You knew about that trap, said Itsuka. There's no way you didn't think of a counter on the fly like that. I had a feeling, Izuku admitted, but I wasn't sure. Luckily, Master Rikai had me learn more about grappling during my years with her. So we could have gotten into a grappling match? Yay, but it's a little awkward for me since I can stretch my limbs. I end up wrapping my opponents like some sort of rope. Itsuka blinked at that, but before her mind could fully process the statement, Midnight was pushing them off the stage so the other contestants could go on. That statement was quickly forgotten by Itsuka, but not by Midnight, who had heard it. He would be an excellent fit for BDSM, Midnight mused, her lips quivering at the idea of Izuku shackling individuals. His fingers would be the ideal replacement for ropes because they are firm and taut, but they are also warm and pulsating, which ropes cannot do. Her thoughts started to stray until... Ahem, Midnight, we're waiting, Shoto abruptly said, startling Midnight to wakefulness. She was unaware that Denki and Hitoshi were waiting there, their eyes questioningly fixed on her. Present Mike had just finished introducing them and was about to yell start when Shoto again nudged him to stop him, sensing that Midnight was not paying attention. As she snapped back to attention, Midnight coughed, making sure to maintain a professional yet sexy appearance. Later on, she would reflect on her thoughts and possibly come up with a justification for confining Izuku in a private detention area within a classroom. As Izuku headed to the infirmary to see how Momo and Ochako were doing, he noticed a tall figure come into view. Oh, there you are, Endeavor said, cocking his head slightly to look at Izuku. Izuku blinked. You were looking for me? And then shot Endeavor a chilly glance. Memories of his own useless father echoed Shoto's words in his mind. I was watching your fight, said Endeavor before pointing at him. You have a wonderful quirk, being able to stretch and create so much wind pressure with a mere flick of a finger. If we're talking about power, yours is comparable to All Might. Izuku recoiled at this remark, blinking. He inhaled deeply a few times, trying to calm himself so he wouldn't panic. Endeavor could not have known the one for all secret since All Might had done a very good job of hiding it. Is that all? Replied Izuku. I have some friends I want to check up on. Izuku started to move past Endeavor in the hopes of leaving as soon as possible. It is my Shoto's duty to surpass All Might, continued Endeavor, stopping Izuku in his tracks. His match with you will no doubt prove to be an instructive test bed. Do not think just because you were able to defeat some whelp with a fraction of my power and no real control of it that you are stronger him, let alone me. Don't give a disgrace match when you face him. Izuku inhaled deeply before looking back at Endeavor. He still has his match with Katsuki Bakugo. I wouldn't underestimate him, as he might be the one to knock out Todoroki before he even gets to me. HMPH, that boy is strong for his age, but he is nothing compared to my Shoto. Perhaps a close match with Shoto being the winner if Shoto only used his ice, but he would be outclassed if my son would use his flames, said Endeavor. I expect him to meet you in the finals. That's all I wanted to say. Izuku, recalling Shoto's words, inhaled deeply once more before uttering, I am not All Might. Endeavor was about to respond after giving Izuku a confused look when he said, and Todoroki is not you either. Izuku left after saying that, presumably to see how Momo and Ochako were doing. Looking at Izuku's back, Endeavor saw it dwindle until he turned the corner. Endeavor walked back to the stands with a sulk. Katsuki Bakugo was hiding in the corner, unseen by either of them. After listening in on Izuku the previous time, he made sure not to move an inch or allow any crackles to emerge from his hands this time. Katsuki clenched his jaw at Endeavor's words after confirming that the two had left. I'm outclassed if he uses his fire. Don't make me laugh, I'll show him that I'm the strongest, and I don't need any damn handicaps. Katsuki was secretly relieved that Izuku had not eliminated him from the championship match. Even though defeating Izuku in front of everyone was his ultimate goal, Katsuki knew that he should not underestimate any opponent. He needed to make a plan now. After his run-in with Endeavor, Izuku hurried to the infirmary to see how Momo and Ochako were doing. Izuku carefully knocked on the door and waited a short while before opening it. I'm coming in, he said. Momo was nestled into a blanket as she sat up in her chair, while Ochako was also sitting up, her eyes obviously puffed up, though she was rubbing them to try to get rid of them. Hey, nice fight, Momo said with a shiver, holding up a polite hand to wave at Izuku. She was defrosted, but still needed to wrap herself in a blanket to stay warm. She had been impacted by the cold much more than Mina because her battle with Shoto had forced her to use up the majority of her fat reserves. Not to add that Mina wasn't entirely covered in a block of ice, but she had been frozen in one. Ochako exclaimed, yeah, you and Itsuka were so cool. Izuku grinned, but he could see despair, uncertainty, and melancholy in their eyes. He could recognize it with great ease. After all, he had been staring at his own reflection in the mirror for the previous 3 years. After losing to Shoto without even trying to hurt him, Momo began to question her own eligibility for the hero course, even though she had been recommended. Ochako was still depressed about losing, but she was feeling a little better now that she had finished talking to her father and crying. Izuku had no idea what to say to his closest friends, but he did not want to see them in such pain. Rather, he followed his mother's lead whenever he felt depressed. He sat down close to Ochako's bed and extended his arm to pull Momo's chair over to sit next to him. Then Momo and Ochako were taken aback and startled when he suddenly reached for their heads and delicately placed them close to his chest. The two girls stammered, confused and embarrassed at this, "Wahahat?" But Izuku ignored them, caressing their hair in a soothing manner that they both began to appreciate as the tension in their shoulders gradually dissipated. It's okay, Izuku said quietly to them both. You both did extremely well against such opponents. There is no shame in losing, but much to gain from it. Don't let this loss set you back. Learn and grow from it. Don't let doubt cloud your judgment and faith in yourself. We're still in high school and heroes in training. There will be more opportunities for us to grow. Both of the girls felt so much better after hearing these words. Izuku had dispelled Momo's doubts that had been brewing inside of her. Izuku had succeeded in motivating Ochako to move forward. Did you come up with that? Asked Ochako with interest. That sounds like a word a wise martial arts master would use from the movies. Izuku laughed as he responded, No, Master Rakai would say these words every time in my dojo during sparring practice. That there is always something to learn from losing. I may have taken it and readjusted it for this case, but it works, right? In addition, I've heard her say that quite a few times when I lost point-based sparring matches, Izuku mused. She is wise, Momo hummed, feeling much better now despite her extreme hunger. Shortly after, a fried Hitoshi was brought into the infirmary and placed on the bed by the paramedic bots. Izuku blinked. We missed that fight, and got up fast. Well, I want to go get a front view seat of the next fight. I'll see you two soon. Izuku hurriedly left, eager to witness the impending battle. Momo and Ochako exchanged a brief, competitive smirk after a little period of eye contact. They both respected one another even though they wouldn't give up on Izuku easily. They both understood that their current way of life would not change even if Izuku dated one of them. Their little glare was broken by Hitoshi's groan, which turned towards the fried Hitoshi. They had all been too busy moping or being cheered up by Izuku to notice the fight. Whatever happened to him? Ochako wondered. Well, according to the chart, he was fighting against Kaminari, Momo thought. Perhaps he took a hit from his quirk at maximum power? A short while ago present Mike yelled, "All right, are you ready?" And Shoto poked his pinky into his ear to make sure he wasn't deaf. Hanta grinned and asked, "He's sure is excited, isn't he?" Then she asked, "Hey, where'd Iida go?" "He went to answer a phone call," said Tsuyu. His whole body was shaking before picking it up. In one corner, he continues to surprise us all. A dark horse in the tournament for sure, Hitoshi Shinso continues to make his way through. And in the other corner, we've seen how much voltage he's got. He's got power enough fuel a 15-minute presentation and light show. From the hero course, Denki Kaminari, shouted the present Mike. Midnight, having gained some time by clearing her throat and returning to judge mode, was the target of both fighters' gazes. Midnight asked, "Are both fighters ready?" Upon witnessing the boys nod in agreement, she threw her whip high into the air. "Begin!" Denki's body was already trembling with electricity before Hitoshi could attempt to speak or even move. "Sorry about this, but I'm ending this in an instant." Indiscriminate shock 1.3 million volts, Denki yelled. A blast of electricity sent Hitoshi reeling backward. Regretfully for Hitoshi, Hanta had forewarned Denki, Mashirao, and Fumikage about Hitoshi's peculiarity, sensing that Yuga wouldn't exactly provide a satisfactory explanation. In an attempt to hit Denki at a distance without shocking him, Hitoshi had selected a wooden staff. Wood wouldn't conduct as readily as metal, so if Denki were struck, it would be too simple for him to use the metal as a conductor to channel his electricity through. Sadly, he was never able to test out this theory. Nevertheless, Hitoshi shocked even himself by remaining conscious while on the ground despite having been struck by such a high voltage. With a groan, Hitoshi attempted one final attempt. With a cough, Hitoshi teased, "Hey, you think you're so good with that lighting?" Denki gave a crazy smile and said, "Wei." Kyoka laughed again from the stands. "You got it." As Hitoshi felt his quirk come on, he thought, "Walk out of the arena." "Wei?" Denki asked, still circling in circles. "What? Why isn't Denki following my orders?" Hitoshi wondered. Hitoshi tried again before realizing there was a problem. Hitoshi's peculiar ability to sense his victim's frontal lobe and cerebellum allowed him to temporarily seize control of those and compel them to follow his commands whenever he employed it. However, Denki's brain wasn't operating as it ought to. If one could put it in words, it would be that Hitoshi's quirk was unable to function properly because those parts had shorted out. How could he have known? Were Hitoshi's final words before he passed out. "Fighter Shinso has fallen unconscious. Fighter Kaminari proceeds onto the next round," said Midnight. With no clue what was happening, Denki exclaimed, why? While one pair of paramedic bots guided Denki out of the arena and another took Hitoshi to the infirmary, Kyoka had been laughing the entire time. Shoto could only watch with a cluck of the tongue as his apprentice performed. As it happened, Hitoshi had been unlucky in this match because real-life altercations rarely ended in open combat. Not to mention that Hitoshi has no actual gears to assist him. Present Mike grinned and said, "Are you sulking?" Shoto glared, "Shut up and move on to the next fight." "Kendo," responded Present Mike, "after we take a short 5-minute break for everyone to stretch their legs or use the bathroom." Shoto waited for the next match while seated in the waiting area. With just one more game, he would face Izuku in the championship match. Considering who Izuku would be facing in his next match, he was certain that Izuku would prevail. It was the ideal arrangement. With only his mother's peculiarity, he would defeat Izuku in the decisive match in front of the entire world, denying his father. Katsuki Bakugo was in another waiting area, thinking over his strategy. He would have to think like Izuku for a little while for this particular plan to succeed. He shuddered mentally at the thought. He had accidentally eavesdropped on the two conversations and had the information he needed. All he needed now was a strategy to force Shoto to fight at maximum capacity while still advancing his own objectives. In the meantime, Mitsuki was growing agitated listening to comments made by spectators regarding how her son's bout with Shoto was sure to end in Shoto's favor. When Endeavor walked by her in the hallway as she was returning from the restroom, she nearly attacked him herself. Endeavor was casually dismissing Katsuki and joking with another pro-hero that his son would be competing in the final. She was undoubtedly harsh with her son, but that was tough love. She was only able to refrain from attacking Endeavor because Inko was able to pull her back to their seat. And now for the semifinals. This will be a big match, announced Present Mike as the audience returned to their seats a second time. And here they come. He's been practically unstoppable as well as untouchable. He's got the blood of the number 2 hero. He's got the power back it up. All his matches today have left his opponents and the audience frozen. The former literally while the latter figuratively. From the hero course, Shoto Todoroki. Filled with light, pillars of fire marked Shoto's arrival as he stepped out into the sunlight. On the other hand, this opponent's no joke either. He's blown all his opponents away and hasn't gotten a scratch either. He fired off the challenge. Now can he back it up against this opponent? From the hero course, Katsuki Bakugo. Mitsuki yelled, "Kick his ass, brat," as Katsuki ascended the stairs into the arena. Katsuki cocked an eyebrow, looking at his parents. His father waved him politely, but his mother was busy shouting other expletives. He turned back to Shoto after raising his fist in acknowledgement to his parents with a slight blush and a smug smile. A flash of rage, irritation, and sadness passed through Shoto's face, and Katsuki blinked before it schooled back into his usual scowl. In other words, Shoto was envious at the time. He remembered how dysfunctional his own family had been after seeing that scene. Despite having an amazing quirk that many would sacrifice anything for, he had a humble upbringing. His mother detested him because of his father. He had a shy father, and he hardly knew his siblings. Now his opponent had a great quirk. Not better than his, mind you. But at least his family was functional, with a mother and father who loved their son above all else. So, in spite of his attempt to suppress that jealousy, Shoto unleashed a torrent of ice as soon as Present Mike yelled, "Start." This did not, however, stop Katsuki from launching a torrent of explosions into the ice, making a hole in the developing glacier and swearing as usual. Katsuki was hidden from the audience as the glacier swiftly engulfed half of the arena. Todoroki gets a blow in right away. Is he trying to avoid close combat with Bakugo? Has the winner been decided? Stated Present Mike. Shoto lectured him, "Don't be stupid, you know it's not." The audience was startled to see their neighbors as they heard muted explosions inside the glacier. Suddenly, Katsuki was completely unharmed when a hole appeared in the middle of the glacier. "Asshole, you already froze me once, you think I'd let you do it again?" Katsuki yelled. Grinning, Katsuki launched himself in the direction of Shoto, who dashed forward to greet him. "The stronger the quirk, the more likely the attack will be imprecise," exclaimed Katsuki, who abruptly changed course, snagging Shoto's left shoulder and head while dodging his right hand. Gaining momentum, Katsuki propelled Shoto in the direction of the ring's edge. "Are you underestimating me, asshole?" angrily exclaimed Katsuki, who was able to throw Shoto farther than he usually could thanks to a peculiarity. With a swift flip, Shoto found his center of gravity and conjured up a wall of ice to keep himself from toppling out of the ring. Then, in that same instant, he skated back towards Katsuki to attack using the ice wall. Shoto used his left hand to seize Katsuki's attacking arm after he quickly sidestepped the blow and launched another attack. Shoto had the opportunity to use his fire at this very moment, but he chose to throw Katsuki away instead. "Asshole! Does he really believe that I'm not strong enough to use fire?" Katsuki, who had landed safely, scowled, saying, "Okay, I'll just have to get him to use it." Shoto attempted to freeze Katsuki with a series of more blows, but Katsuki never stopped moving, never allowing Shoto to freeze him. Before long, Katsuki noticed that Shoto was losing speed and that he was beginning to gain the upper hand over him. I knew it, Katsuki thought to herself, the longer I play, the stronger I get. With just his ice, half and half can't survive for very long before becoming hypothermic. He could reverse that condition with the flames in his quirk if he wasn't a moron. The audience realized that Shoto was being forced into an awkward situation. Huh, looks like the son of Endeavor isn't all that after all. Man, I'm kinda disappointed. Yay, I thought it'd be more than this. Hearing these remarks, Endeavor had to grit his teeth and fight the urge to yell at his disobedient son to use the flames. Although he was losing money as a result of this, he would have already used the flames if he could have persuaded his son to do so. Shouting would only drive Shoto farther away. Katsuki glanced at the trembling Shoto before scowling. You sure talk big for a weakling. Bragging how you would beat fucking Deku when you should have been focused on me. But I can see why you aimed for Deku, as I'm gonna be the number one here. Go for the weaker one, put a realistic goal. But hell, you should have aimed lower. Even my fight against Uraraka was more exciting than this shit. Izuku, taking notes at one of the exits, arched an eyebrow at Katsuki's remarks, particularly the use of a name. Katsuki hardly ever mentioned someone by name, let alone twice. With a twinge of resentment at Katsuki's remarks, Shoto shivered and asked, "Are you planning to blab me to sleep?" Shoto was given a hard look by Katsuki, who then said something that made him even angrier. "Use your flames." Shoto snarled, "What, did my old man put you up to this?" "Fuck him," Katsuki replied, causing Shoto to blink his eyes in. "This ain't a place where you can bring some fucked up daddy issues. This is a place where we show off to everyone well, more specifically, what I can do. I don't want a half-baked win from a half-assed guy who won't use his full power. This battle is just about you and me." Shoto stumbled around for a while before hurling himself at Katsuki, blinded by rage. With ease, Katsuki sidestepped it and delivered a vicious knee to Shoto's chest, forcing him back down to the ground. Shoto stood back up, and Katsuki yelled, "Come on, don't fucking hold back on me. I'm aiming to be a hero. What about you, faggot?" Shoto's feelings were now all over the place. He was at a loss for what to think. He was aware that Katsuki's actions were completely out of character. What was his motivation, though? His mind kept returning to the embarrassing memories of his early years, when he was never allowed to play with his older siblings. As soon as he developed a quirk, he would always train. His face, particularly the left side, reminded his mother of him so much that she felt compelled to squirt hot water on him in retaliation. When Katsuki realized Shoto wasn't hearing him, he growled. It was more difficult than he anticipated. He wasn't fucking Deku, after all. Speaking of Deku, Katsuki ventured to look in the direction of the exit and noticed Izuku standing there. As soon as their gazes locked, Izuku mouthed some words to Katsuki. He was able to determine Katsuki's intentions just by glancing at him and listening to what the man said. Katsuki quickly committed the words Izuku was mouthing to memory. Using what he knew, he started building up to those words very quickly. "My quirk comes from the combination of my parents' quirk, glycerin and oxidizing sweat. Both aren't very good for fights, but hell, my old hag could probably kick half of the hero's ass even with her quirk only giving her smooth skin. You got that right, brat. My parents' quirks combined gave me a kick-ass quirk, even when they didn't even plan for it." Shoto felt a wave of anger come over him at this remark. Unlike his current opponent, who was created out of love and had a powerful quirk, he had been carefully bred to have a superior quirk and had had a difficult upbringing. "But you know what? It's not my father or my mother's quirk. It's my fucking quirk. We're in a battle, fighting to see who's better. There's no who's father or mother shit. There's only ourselves. So use those flames of yours. It's your fucking quirk, isn't it? Not your dad, not your mom, your fucking own power," Katsuki yelled. Shoto suddenly remembered something after Katsuki's final words, breaking through all the bad memories. He had nearly forgotten the priceless recollection. He and his mother were watching a live talk show called All Might as the guest while seated on the couch. Yay, that's right, children inherit quirks from their parents. But the really important thing is not that connection, but recognizing your own flesh and blood. Recognizing yourself. That's what I mean when I say, I am here. With his mother Rei seated beside him, A young Shoto was staring at the television in amazement and wonder at the world's greatest hero. With tears in his eyes, Shoto expressed to her his desire to avoid becoming like his father. Rei had been lucky to get her son to turn on the channel. "But you want to be a hero, don't you?" asked Rei with a sweet smile. "It's okay for you to be one. You don't have to be a prisoner of your blood. It's okay for you to become one who you want to be." When Shoto looked into his mother's eyes, he saw unconditional love for her child, accepting Shoto for who he was, father included. "I had completely forgotten about those words before I realized it." Shoto's left side erupted in flames, engulfing his body in flames and setting the stage ablaze as a fire pillar erupted. The heat from the flames was felt by the audience, causing them to perspire. Present Mike exclaimed, startled, "What the hell is this?" Izuku grinned broadly at the sight of this. Had he been facing Shoto, he would have acted in the same way as Katsuki, albeit perhaps with kinder language and with the slightly different objective of trying to save Shoto. Shoto had broken his self-imposed restrictions and the flames he vowed not to use. Mitsuki couldn't resist yelling more expletives from the stands to encourage Katsuki. Masaru couldn't help but smile a little and sigh. He was aware of his family's background and that Katsuki detested victory if his rival hadn't given it their all. Toshinori was left staring in shock and surprise. He was taken aback when Katsuki chose to provoke Shoto to use his left side the Flamesa instead of finishing the fight when he had the opportunity. Shoto had vowed not to use the flames in a fight. With the ice melting off his body, Shoto gritted, "Even though you want to win, to go out of your way to help an enemy. Which one of us is screwing around now?" He also started to lose the ice he had made during the match. "Don't fucking think I was trying to help you. I want an undeniable victory. I don't want some pansy ass putting out, what if, situations. I want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm the strongest one." Katsuki smiled as he rolled his neck and shoulder, feeling his sweat starting to pour out some more. "Sounds like you," laughed Shoto. "Did Midoriya help you with that whole speech to motivate me?" Katsuki shot back, refusing to acknowledge that Izuku's words had provided the necessary encouragement. "Hell no, he'd probably sprinkle some cheesy shit to get you to break out of your shell. I just want to kick your ass," she said. The entire stadium could hear Endeavor's voice just before the two were about to square off again. "Shootoo." With excitement flickering through the flames on his shoulders, Endeavor started to slowly descend the stairs. "Have you finally accepted yourself? That's it, good, it all starts from here for you. With my blood, you will surpass me. You will fulfill my desire," Endeavor said with a maniacal grin. Present Mike hesitantly said, "Endeavor has suddenly shouted words of encouragement. What a doting father." Katsuki laughed, "Hey, what a nuisance, getting all sentimental in our fight." "Indeed, there's no him," said Shoto. "Just us two in this arena, nobody else." Ignoring the cries of the crowd, the two just stared at one another. "Splatter that two-faced punk," exclaimed Mitsuki, "kick his ass, brat." Masaru, who was trying in vain to pull Mitsuki down, hissed, "Honey, you're getting too loud. What if Endeavor's son hears you?" Mitsuki cried, "Then I'll kick his ass too." Toshinori, perspiring, said, "The Bakugo family sure is something," and Inko laughed. "No fear in them." Shoto kicked his right leg violently, causing ice to form all around him and chill the air. Fortunately, he was protected from freezing to death by the flames on his left leg. Katsuki launched another ice storm, far more powerful than the ones he had previously attempted, in Shoto's direction. He detonated a massive explosion to avoid it, then fired another one at Shoto. With his hands facing behind him, Katsuki quickly crossed his arms across his chest and set off a smaller chain of explosions that sent him spinning in Shoto's direction. Already, Shoto had rekindled his flames and melted the pillars of ice he had built behind him. "Midnight, this is too dangerous," Cementos exclaimed, getting ready to work with the cement as he placed his hands on the surface. In response, Midnight shook her head and said, "I think they know what they're doing, but be ready nonetheless." Katsuki was now spinning faster and faster every second as she approached Shoto. With a slow motion, Shoto extended his left hand in front of Katsuki, preparing to deliver his final blow of the battle. Cementos exclaimed, "Midnight." Midnight nodded, "Do it." Cementos moved quickly to put up a single cement wall between the two rivals and then made an unsuccessful attempt to build more. Howitzer impact! Cried Katsuki, launching the largest explosion he had yet seen in front of him with his right hand. Shoto responded by gripping his left palm and shooting a stream of ferocious flames directly towards Katsuki, heating the chilly air and causing it to rapidly expand. The cement wall was destroyed by a massive explosion that resulted from the two attacks colliding right in the middle of the arena. During the attack, Midnight was blown off her feet and the stand she was standing on, sending her flying to the wall. The entire stadium was hit by strong gusts of wind, causing many spectators to cling to their seats to avoid being carried away. Mitsuki yelled, "Fuck yay!" as she held on to her husband to keep herself from taking off. Masaru had clung to the chair to prevent himself from taking off. Before realizing that Toshinori, despite his seemingly bony body, could withstand the shockwave, Inko clung onto him to maintain her ground. He didn't even grab the wall in front of him or raise his hand to block the wind. Instead, he just moved his arms around Inko to assist in her fall while he was staring down at the stage. It seemed as though he was accustomed to such extensive assaults. Being a hero trainer, she assumed he was accustomed to such things, but something inside of her told her otherwise. Nevertheless, Inko remained silent, choosing instead to press her head even closer to Toshinori's chest. "Just because something is powerful doesn't mean it's a good thing," said Cementos. "But seriously, this is quite something." "What was that just now? What the heck is with your class?" Present Mike exclaimed, collapsing backward on his seat with his feet in the air. Shoto gave a brief explanation of how Katsuki's explosion and Shoto's attack were identical. Present Mike exclaimed, "URG, I can't see a thing. Just who won the match?" After the shockwave caused her mask to fall off her face, Midnight carefully picked herself up from the debris. Fortunately, her ultra-thin bodysuit did not tear up or cause a wardrobe malfunction, even though it was very close to the impact zone. She squinted as she attempted to see through the gradually dispersing dust. Shoto was the first person to be noticed. He was standing at the edge of the boundary line, almost falling over, and was heavily panting. In order to keep himself upright, he was using his ice to freeze his legs in place. His body strewn with scrapes and bruises. The left side of the shirt burned clean from his flames. Katsuki, on the other end of the stage, was positioned exactly in front of the border, his hair falling over his eyes. Katsuki started to fall forward, toward the ground, slowly but surely. Katsuki was keeling forward, and there were gasps all around the stage. Many people, including Midnight, Endeavor, Shoto, and many others, believed that the match was over. Shoto even started to loosen up, believing it was over. Just a handful of people, Inko, Toshinori, Mitsuki, Masaru, and Izuku thought otherwise. Mitsuki exclaimed, "Come on brat, don't keel over now." Masaru exclaimed, "You can do it, son." Izuku was gazing at the battle, observing Katsuki waver before collapsing forward. Izuku could only yell a single word as he started to fall. "Kachan." Thinking it was over, Midnight was about to declare, "Fighter Bakugo is." Katsuki's hands, which had been turned to face behind him, burst open. Katsuki launched himself forward, straight towards Shoto, with two powerful explosions that were nearly as large as the one he had made against Ochako. Shoto attempted to step aside, but his eyes grew wide. Despite his lightning-fast reflexes, Shoto had forgotten that he needed to freeze his own feet in order to remain upright. It was too late by the time his legs loosened and he began to move. As he struck Shoto in the stomach with a headbutt, Katsuki exclaimed, "Don't count me out, asshole." Shoto's mouth was open and spitting as Katsuki's head hit him in the stomach. Shoto was thrown backward for a while by the impact force, but he was able to stop his momentum by conjuring up some ice. Shoto saw Katsuki flat on his face and quickly lit his left hand to fight back. He saw that Katsuki was covered in burns, the majority of which were first-degree burns but a few of which were second-degree. After his last attack, Katsuki was lying flat on his face, not even moving. The crowd was startled when Midnight abruptly declared, "Fighter Todoroki is out of bounds. Winner is Bakugo, who advances onto the finals." Shoto looked down at his feet and blinked, realizing he was indeed out of bounds. The announcement stunned the audience into silence. Shoto was obviously still upright, but Katsuki was twitching momentarily on the ground. However, Shoto was out of bounds, so Katsuki won. And Katsuki's obstinate desire for victory was the cause of it all. Somewhere in the crowd there was a clap, and then there were many more claps until the entire stadium was cheering and applauding. Holy shit, that was unexpected. That was epic. Man. Can't believe that kid managed to punt Endeavor's kid out of bounds. I know, right? Not only that, he baited the other to go all out and still won, even if it was by a technicality. It goes without saying that a lot of people were watching Katsuki as paramedic bots carried him to the infirmary on a stretcher. Shoto moved slowly out of the arena and into the corridors, but Endeavor got in his way and stopped him. "Get out of my way, aren't you going to say that?" Endeavor said with his eyebrows arched before continuing lecturing. "You need to control your left side. All you're doing is just letting it out, and it's dangerous. You even lost despite using it. But at the very least, you've abandoned that childish tantrum and have begun a path to becoming the perfect upgrade of me. After you graduate, come work for me. I'll lead you to the path of the mighty." Endeavor gestured to Shoto with his hand. "And at last defeated All Might," Endeavor added in his head. "There's no way I abandoned anything," replied Shoto glumly, causing Endeavor to blink. "After all that's happened, it's not something that can be reversed so easily. It's just, back then, during the fight. For that moment, I forgot about you." That remark left Endeavor gaping in shock, but it was unclear if Shoto saw it or not. Instead, he continued, "Whether that's a good thing or not. Whether it's correct or not. I need some time to think about it." As he passed Endeavor, thinking about what lay ahead, Shoto heard him clear his throat. "That's good and all, but you may want to ponder about your choice fast, most likely after the next round for the finals." At those words, Shoto spun around, confused. Had he lost? Really? Why then would he need to consider his options so quickly? The following round, he was not fighting. "The damage you dealt against that brat can't be easily healed within half an hour, even with Recovery Girl's help," said Endeavor. "You may have lost the battle, but you can still win this war. Is sports festival is one of the biggest highlights in Japan. To have a final where one side can't fight would tank the ratings. So most likely, they will have you fight against the winner of the other semifinal, which would most likely be this Midoriya Izuku. This is your second chance to show the world what you, my progeny, can do. With both your ice and flames, you can defeat him. So go get yourself to the infirmary and heal up." With Endeavor gone, Shoto was left alone. Leaning against the wall, Shoto absorbed that knowledge. True, he was still in better fighting shape than Katsuki, but that was only because Katsuki had chosen to postpone the fight in order to unleash Shoto's full potential. Shoto was certain that he wouldn't have as many injuries as he did now if Katsuki hadn't done that. Shoto still desired to battle Izuku, but his objectives had changed. Now, it was more about proving himself. But to earn this kind of fight, it gave his mouth a bad taste. Shoto muttered, "If it does come to that," before deciding what to do. Recovery Girl reprimanded the youngsters. "Geez, you kids these days, while tending to Katsuki's burns. So reckless. Now hold still." Shu Katsuki suppressed a shiver as he felt the Recovery Girls kiss him on the cheek, and then he felt his burns go away and became less painful. But that sensation passed too quickly for him to enjoy, and Katsuki saw that he still had numerous burns on him. As Katsuki exclaimed, "Hey, what gives?" he was met with a blow to the head from a syringe cane. "No shouting," warned Recovery Girl. "I can't heal all your injuries at once, as it would exhaust you to death. I healed all your more serious burns, but you'll have to wait before I can heal your other burns. Not to mention you seriously fractured your wrists. You're running on fumes right now, so you barely have any energy I can use to heal you. Now eat these gummies." With a muttered, "Damn old hag," Katsuki dutifully consumed a portion of the gummies. He was a bit of a stamina freak, along with Izuku and a few others, so the fact that he felt exhausted after the kiss was noteworthy. "I need to go kick Deku's ass," Katsuki insisted, "but I'll be good to go later, right?" As she got off her stool, Recovery Girl sighed and said, "As a medical professional, I don't think you'll have enough time to heal up." "What? Why? Just heal up my other burns. I can take it," shouted Katsuki. "I'm not tired yet. I have enough energy to spare. Just give me some food and a drink and I'll be able to beat the shit out of Deku." "You idiot, don't lie," snapped Recovery Girl as she thrust her syringe can chest and making him shiver. "I only healed up your second-degree burns and applied some dose onto your wrist. It hasn't even fully healed yet, not to mention your other burns. You chained so many explosions that it caused it to fracture. And I've yet to even go into details about your muscles. Now stay in bed, get some rest, or I'll shove this syringe up a place you don't want to go. And I'm not squeamish to do so. I'll be the judge of whether or not you can participate in the next bout. Katsuki was the only person in the room when Recovery Girl slammed the door shut with a pout. Katsuki sighed, "TCH, miserable hag," but dutifully followed her instructions. Anyhow, he could really use the nap. He was going to bust himself out if Recovery Girl didn't finish healing him by the time the alarm went off in 20 minutes. Well, it took a while, but we got the stage fixed up. Now who's ready for the next fight? Shouted the present mic. In response, the crowd erupted in cheers, ready to witness the next titanic battle. Alright, let's continue on with the show. He's shown us power, he's shown us skill. He's been #1 in all of today's events. From the hero course, Izuku Midoriya, versus, he's got some serious voltage that's he's been bringing out. From the hero course, Denki Kaminari. The two boys were facing each other, prepared for a fight. So, I can't somehow convince you to just give up, Denki responded. Izuku laughed, unless you can somehow use Shinso's quirk, no. Yay, thought so, Denki admitted. I have no real chance, do I? Denki was certain that he would lose this match. Any lightning attacks Izuku could have launched would have been totally negated by his rubber body, and any punches or kicks would have been equally ineffective. Put simply, Denki could do him no favors. He was from the hero course, which prohibited the use of support gear unless authorized, so perhaps he could have a chance if he had some. In his mind, there was really only one thing to do. Present Mike exclaimed, "Are you ready? Fight!" Izuku was about to step forward when Denki declared as he raised his hands in the air. "I give up." That statement surprised more people than just Izuku, who fell to the ground. That statement made Midnight, Present Mike, and a good number of others fall backward in shock. Present Mike, still on his back, yelled into his microphone, "What the hell is this? The fight just started, and it's already ended with a forfeit? Air Fighter Kaminari has forfeited the round. Izuku Midoriya wins." Midnight was trailing off. "Kaminari, are you alright? Are you injured?" "Nah, just don't want to fight a fight I'm have no chance of winning," Denki replied. "I also don't want to be beaten up too badly either. So why not just forfeit and get off scratch-free?" "I suppose that's one way to look at it," said Midnight. Fighter Midoriya goes on to the finals. Present Mike sighed, "Eraser head, what's up with your students?" Many of the spectators had begun to jeer at Denki's choice, hoping for another thrilling bout. "It's not a bad idea," said Shoto, "sometimes in fights, if there is no path to victory from charging head-on, a strategic retreat is wise. Of course, in a real fight, a hero should always engage the enemy even if there is no chance of victory, but instead, try to distract the villain until reinforcements arrive. In this case, though, Kaminari's reason is sound. Except for the getting beaten part. Kaminari, expect heavy training after this." Denki exclaimed, "Why me?" as he walked off stage. "Well, due to the quick match, we will proceed with the finals without break, if that's fine with you, Midoriya," said Midnight. Izuku nodded and got back up, ready to take on Katsuki. Present Mike exclaimed, swiftly standing up and reviving the excitement, "And now we go to the finals. Izuku Midoriya versus Katsuki Bakugo is the best of UA freshmen, and the winner will be determined right here." When a minute went by without Katsuki emerging from the door, Present Mike began to get nervous. Present Mike began, "Will Bakugo," but stopped briefly to place his hand over his earpiece. "Well, Recovery Girl has informed me that Bakugo is not fit to fight, which makes sense given his last match. So what should we do now?" Present Mike asked. "Just put an end to it here," Shoto drolly said. He could return home sooner if the tournament was over. He could get some much-needed sleep if he returned home sooner. Present Mike sulked, partially rejecting Shoto's statement, "We can't do that. It would be a disappointing ending after such a radical battle. Such incidents had occurred on occasion in the past." Midnight shrugged, "Then again, we don't really have much choice, do we?" Here was when Endeavor's voice broke through. "How about letting my son fight in the finals?" Endeavor boomed, grabbing the attention of the crowd. it would be a disappointment to end the sports festival of UA in such a way. Shoto Todoroki has already recovered from his injuries and is ready to do battle. And after such a battle, I believe everyone can expect another one just as grand? The audience members exchanged glances and whispered to one another. Todoroki versus Midoriya, Well, we did see Todoroki pull some epic moves, and so did Midoriya when he fought against that copycat. It would epic. Before long, the crowd was chanting phrases that Endeavor was hoping to hear. All of them were urging Shoto and Izuku to fight. Present Mike's sweat dropped. I'm not sure if we can do that, it seems highly improbable, but then he noticed boos coming his way. But we can probably ask Principal Nezu about this, he said. Huffing, it's illogical. Shoto was just ready for the festival to be over. Using her headset, Midnight had already called Nezu and was awaiting his orders. Nezu, on the other hand, was relishing the spectacular fight he was presiding over for the third-year pupils. With the exception of his closest friends Tamaki Imajiki and Najire Hado, Mirio Tagata had shocked all of his classmates by defeating the winner of the second-year Students' Sports Festival last year in the battle tournament's opening round. The aforementioned loser had boasted that he would win handily, only to be ejected from the ring with his butt protruding. Nezu thought, obviously, he's improved even more since studying with Night Eye. Mirio only entered the heroic course in his second year, and even then, he didn't really stand out. But because of his unique cultivation, he attracted Night Eye's attention. It should come as no surprise that he is unbeatable against his opponents. He felt his earpiece vibrate as he watched Mirio battle Tamaki in the semifinals. Nezu whispered, Nezu here, as he cautiously continued to focus on the battle. Midnight here, we have a small situation, she said in a whisper before giving him the full rundown. Nezu hummed a little while announcing Mirio the victor of the duel. Nezu nodded and let the announcer finish her segment for a while. I will be speaking to Endeavor about his words, Nezu said, adding, go with the flow, I suppose. Nezu laughed to himself, and squeezed out a sizable donation from him. The crowd let out a loud cheer when Midnight declared, okay, going along with popular demand as well as permission from Principal Nezu, Todoroki will be taking Bakugo's place in the finals. With the exception of a select few, including a particular set of parents. That's bullshit, Mitsuki exclaimed, booing in response. My son beat his ass. Why does he get to go again? Toshinori, who was secretly in agreement with Mitsuki, began. Well, it would draw in more excitement, he was trying to give a business explanation for it. Mitsuki yelled, shut it. Which made Toshinori back off. Fucking brat, where are you? You can't let this match go, Mitsuki exclaimed. Before long, Shoto found himself back on stage, confronting Izuku. Shoto shrugged his shoulder and scowled. He wanted to fight Izuku, for sure, but not in this manner. Therefore, there was just one thing to do. And the added bonus that it would enrage his father sealed the deal. Izuku was also not fond of the circumstances. He was prepared to battle Katsuki, who had earned his position. Shoto wasn't the target of his animosity, but Katsuki had made many sacrifices to force his opponent to fight at full strength. Izuku knew that Katsuki would have prevailed if he hadn't taken the extra time to bait Shoto into using his maximum power, allowing him to demonstrate to everyone that even with Shoto's maximum power, he could still win. Alright. Todoroki versus Midoriya, ready, fi. There was a voice from one of the exits saying, hold the fuck up. With bandages still covering various parts of his body, Katsuki was seen walking out of the exit as everyone turned to face it. Who the hell said I was done? I ain't fucking giving my place to someone who lost to me. I'm the one who's going to kick Deku's ass. Present Mike blinked. Oh, it looks like Bakugo is still alive and kicking. Present Mike turned to face Shota, who just shrugged and asked, Midnight, did you hear from Recovery Girl that Bakugo was up? Before Recovery Girl's voice could be heard blaring into their mic, Midnight shook her head. That stubborn child. I told him he was in no condition to participate. He knows he's running on fumes and needs bed rest. Instead, what does he do? He somehow managed to get an espresso, energy drinks, and whatever ungodly drinks that have caffeine, mixed them together, and drank the whole damn thing. I don't even know how he got those drinks. Eijiro looked away at the stage with guilt as he returned to the stands. He was the one who had brought Katsuki everything. He'd been called by Katsuki to bring all those drinks over. Eijiro ignored it, considering Katsuki's early awakening to be a sign of manliness. Then he saw Katsuki transfer those liquids into a different cup, give it a shake, and then down it without thinking. Then, claiming he needed time to grow, Katsuki ejected Eijiro. Eijiro turned to return to his seat without even trying to answer. Eijiro had not responded when Mina had asked him what was going on. He was at a loss for words regarding what he had just seen or done. Katsuki stomped up the stairs, yelling, "Get your ass off, half and half bastard." Ignoring the three boys, Midnight stared at them, unsure of what to do. Even though Katsuki had not been given the all-clear to fight, he remained poised and prepared on the stage. Izuku grinned slightly as he turned to face Katsuki. Shoto was also at a loss for what to do and simply stood there, expressionless. "Well, nobody can say this year's sports festival for the first year isn't interesting," said the present Mike. Eraser head, a little help here?" The response was, "Z's." Katsuki felt a prick on his neck and was helpless to do anything about it. With haste, he removed the object lodged in his throat, revealing a syringe. "Wah!" blurted Katsuki before collapsing to the floor. Recovery girl mumbled, "I told him that I'd be the one to decide whether he fights or not," as she emerged from the exit and approached Katsuki before dragging him away. Even though he was unconscious, Katsuki was twitching on the ground and somehow grabbing the ground, leaving a trace of his stubbornness. Present Mike exclaimed, "Well, that happened. Let's get the show on the road now." Midnight tried to introduce the match, but Shoto interrupted, saying, "Hold up, I would like to say something." "All right, go ahead," Midnight gestured. "I forfeit," Shoto announced, shocking everyone. "As much as I would like to have another chance to fight and show my skills against a worthy opponent, I do not deserve this chance. I lost to Bakugo fair and square. Not only that, but Bakugo's desire for victory, the desire to fight, despite his injuries that I inflicted, he still managed to summon the willpower to walk up here to fight another battle. To take his place would be nothing but disgraceful if I accepted. So, therefore, I will not fight." Shoto turned around and walked off stage, bringing everyone back to silence. Present Mike stammered a little before booming, "Well, since Todoroki has refused to fight, Bakugo can't fight, and Kaminari already fought Midoriya and lost. I guess the tournament is over. The winner of this year's Class 1 sports festival is Izuku Midoriya." The audience exchanged glances and then began to applaud Izuku softly. Izuku turned to face the people cheering him on for what seemed to be a victory. Even though he had prevailed, it didn't feel real. The first 2 rounds were the real fights he had. Though he couldn't hold Denki responsible for forfeiting because nothing he did could harm him, he was desperate to win the championship. His gaze strayed and he found himself staring at both Toshinori and his mother, who was once again beaming with happiness. As their eyes met, Toshinori realized what Izuku desired. He just shrugged, telling Izuku that not much could be done, even though that was what he wanted. Every fighter also had pride in themselves. Not to mention, Izuku had a strong performance in the tournament's first 2 rounds and the first 2 games. Furthermore, even for him, it was no laughing matter to have Inko smash his hands each time Izuku was struck. Even so, he acknowledged that it felt good. If the suffering had not been mentioned. Ultimately, though, Izuku did prove to the world that he was here. After a few minutes before long, every first-year student was once again gathered in the field for the final ceremony. Reporters were snapping away taking pictures. All of the first-year events for this year's UA Sports Festival has been completed, and now, we will begin with the award ceremony, said Midnight. As the fireworks were launched into the air, the audience started to cheer and applaud. Smoke billowed from the ground behind Midnight, and podiums started to rise. Denki and Shoto shared the podium and stood in third place, going from right to left. Denki was waving to the crowd while Shoto was dutifully staring ahead, though he kept nervously checking the winner of second place with his head. Izuku Midoriya was in first place, grinning at the audience and flicking his gaze over to the podium in second place. Katsuki Bakugo was standing on the podium in second place, where most of the competitors and spectators were focusing because of its striking appearance. Muzzled and heavily chained up to a wall that Cementos had built. They could all see him trying to yell expletives while he struggled to get out of the lock. Eijiro's sweat dropped. "Oh geez, He's been struggling ever since he woke up. Fumikage said, he's like a man-eating fiend. Oh my goodness, this is going down in history. Mitsuki laughed and kicked her legs. Masaru sighed, though his lips were slightly puckered. Mitsuki, come on, it's not that funny. By the way, where did Yagi go? Toshinori mentioned that he had a crucial call he needed to attend. Inko proudly smiled back at her son. Izuku was scanning the competitors, and when he spotted Momo, Ochako, and Itsuka, his eyes brightened. Tenya was still absent from the crowd, though, for some reason. I hope he's okay, Izuku said to himself. Tenya had abruptly left without providing him with any information. He only found out because Eijiro informed him that he had departed. Midnight started to make an announcement, and that's when his thoughts returned to the here and now. Now, we will award the medals. The presentation of the medals, of course, will be presented by this man. Ha 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 ha. A booming laugh that was universally recognized echoed through the stadium. After a quick scan of the area, they all saw All Might's shadow standing atop the stadium, with the sun gradually lighting him up. Then All Might made a sharp dash out of the stadium, flipped in the air to the delight of the crowd, and landed flawlessly in front of the podium. I have brought the medals here, our very own hero, All Might. A moment of silence passed as the two concluded their remarks, Midnight's voice echoing and drowning out All Might's because she was speaking into a microphone. Midnight put her hands together and apologized. Sorry, I talked over you. She was obviously embarrassed. The first thing that the audience talked about was how fortunate the first-year students were to have the greatest hero looking out for them. With a quick smile, Midnight said, now then, All Might, please present the medals, starting with the third place. With a nod, All Might handed Midnight the medal case to hold while he gave Denki the medals himself. All Might put the bronze medal over Denki's head and around his neck and gave him a gentle hug. Young Denki, congratulations. You certainly have a lot of power with your quirk. However, in order to fight well against different types, especially ones that you seem weak to, you'll have to strengthen not only your quirk, but your body and spirit. Try to think of different ways you can use your quirk, All Might said. Thanks, laughed Denki. But man, being third place? Never thought I'd get to here. Think my chances with girls are better now? Ignoring that query, All Might turned to face Shoto and handed over the second bronze medal. Young Todoroki, congratulations. I assumed there was a reason why you never used your left side until now against Bakugo. Replied, there was a part of me that I despised until now. Now, I realize it's a part of me. Bakugo's speech was tinged with Midoriya's characteristics, no doubt. Bakugo did it to prove himself, while I'm sure Midoriya would have done it to aid me. I'm beginning to understand a little about why you're interested in him. I want to become a hero like you, but it wouldn't be right for me to be the only one to break away. There's something now that I must settle first before moving on. The look on your face is completely different from before, All Might said with a nod of approval. And with that, he knelt to give Shoto a soft embrace and said, I won't ask about the details, but I'm sure you'll be able to do what you need to do. If you need help, you know where to find me. Shoto nodded. Yes, and All Might got back up and approached the still struggling Katsuki. Now then, young Bakugo. This is a bit much, isn't it? Laughed All Might as he removed the muzzle. You almost did what you said you would do in your player pledge. You knew you could have defeated Todoroki if you didn't provoke him to use his fire, but you not only aided him, but proved that you could defeat him still. Not only that, but I couldn't help but admire your stubbornness to prove yourself. That tenacity will take you far. When All Might saw Katsuki's angry expression with his eyes pointing upward, he looked down and started to perspire. Katsuki yelled with rage, All Might. I don't accept this. I didn't get to fucking fight Deku. I can't accept second place if I didn't even get the chance to prove myself stronger than Deku, to which I am. That fucking newer. All Might put his hand over Katsuki's mouth to stop him from continuing his tirade. Shush. You don't want to piss off Recovery Girl after what she did last time, do you? All Might said. With a glare, Katsuki obeyed grudgingly as All Might withdrew his hand. In this world where people are constantly being compared publicly, there are not many who can keep aiming for the top of an unchanging scale. The fact you aim for that without losing any of your passion is commendable. Keep that up and perhaps tone down the anger, and you'll be one of the top heroes for sure. It was mere unfortunate circumstances that you were unable to heal up fast enough for Recovery Girl to pronounce you capable of fighting. I have no doubt that the next time you two clash that it will be epic. Now then, just accept this medal as a wound, as one you won't forget. As All Might attempted to place the medal over his head, Katsuki snarled, I don't want it, I want to fight. All Might chose to put the band in his mouth instead of covering his head because Katsuki leaned back to stop him from doing so. Whispering to Katsuki, if it's any consolation, young Midoriya's actions might put some of that anger to rest. All Might hugged Katsuki briefly before turning his attention to Izuku. Young Midoriya, congratulations on winning this tournament. Though don't let it go to your head, one must always push themselves to improve, otherwise other can easily catch up. Izuku stopped All Might as he was about to put the medal around his neck, putting his hand forward and motioning for him to put it there. All Might, a little confused, made the decision to do so. With the medal in hand, Izuku turned to face Katsuki, who was still attempting to escape his restraints. Bakugo, Izuku said, causing Katsuki to turn his opponent, just like you. I don't really want to accept this medal. I may have won, but I don't feel like I proved myself enough to deserve it, especially since my last two fights were pretty much given to me. So I'll hold on to this medal for now, but sometime later, we'll duke it out once more to see who truly deserves this medal. You, too, Todoroki. I know it took a lot of effort to forfeit your second chance, especially with all those declarations you made against me. I look forward to fighting to see who will come out on top. As he gave up trying, Katsuki couldn't help but smile menacingly and exclaim, it's a fucking deal, Deku. Shoto couldn't help but agree with this statement with a smirk. Izuku apologized and turned to face All Might again, grinning, saying, I don't think I lived up to the expectations set for me. All Might reached out and hugged Izuku before whispering into his ears, no. You far surpassed my expectations ever since the beginning of the sports festival. Your will, your dedication, and your ability to inspire. The fact that you still remain so humble. I have no regrets in passing one for all to you for sure now. You are everything I envisioned you would be. I have no doubt that you will become a symbol of peace after my time fades, a pillar of support. And with your strength, you will inspire others to become pillars of peace. So stand tall, Izuku. Izuku had to look away in order to dry his eyes, but he still managed to smile back at All Might. Additionally, All Might used his first name for the first time, demonstrating his level of care and trust in him. All Might quickly returned to the competitors to tell each of them, well, they were the winners this time. But listen up, anyone here could have ended up in these podiums. It's just as you saw competing, improving each other, and climbing even further. The next generation of heroes is definitely sprouting. I just have one more thing to say. Everyone, please say it with me. Ready, go. In anticipation of shouting out the words that served as UA's school motto, everyone inhaled deeply. Plus Ultra, thank you for your hard work. After a strange pause, the crowd teased All Might for using the incorrect phrase, and eventually they started to boo him. Even All Might stumbled over his own defense, but the damage was already done. Before long, the pupils started making their way back to their individual classrooms. A hero in a makeshift staff room yawned. Well, that ended. Guess we should head back out to help the audience leave in a calm and timely manner. After the others gave their approval, Kamui Wood abruptly stopped them from leaving by growing a wooden wall as a result of his quirk. Someone said, hey, what gives? To that. Death Arms turned to face everyone as he coughed, ahem. I think we had a little bet about who would win this tournament. A brief period of silence was followed by, really? Come on, that's not fair, he won by default. Yay, my bet had to fight the other top competitor there. Despite their constant complaints, Death Arms and Kamui Woods remained unwavering. After a short while, the majority of them moaned as they arranged themselves in a line, each pushing money into Death Arms' hands before Kamui Wood released them. You really milked them, didn't you? Death Arms whistled while counting the bills in his hand, much to the surprise of Mount Lady. Hey, we told you the kid would go far, Kamui Woods said with a smile. As he handed Kamui Woods half of it, Death Arms nodded and said, yep. And here's your share. Now let's get out there before Nezu gets mad at us.
So that's it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.